Well, I'm very sorry about being late, but there was a really heavy rain on the way to Nicosia. It still rains heavily in the Nicosia district. Thanks God that Düsseldorf district seems a little more fine than Nicosia, so it took me almost 2 hours to drive from Famagusta. It was almost 4 o'clock when I left the university. It took me almost 2 hours to arrive here. I'm pretty thankful to Professor Taşeran for giving me this opportunity to join you guys here this evening to share a boring topic with you. I'm sure you will find it boring, so don't hesitate to ask questions to make it funny. I'll try my best to answer your questions in the most logical way if I can. I'm actually an expert in banking and finance. I have been working in financial development area, foreign direct investments. Recently, I started working on energy issues, energy finance, energy economics. This thing that I'm going to present today came into my interest recently, and what I'm going to present here is a work in progress. I haven't finished it yet with a couple of my colleagues. We're still working on it. Maybe next time I'll bring the complete work of our findings. But today I will just share some conceptual topics about shadow banking. If I'm not, any one of you is familiar with the term called shadow banking. It's different from the traditional banking that we have today. And some preliminary findings, graphics, and all that. Then I will wait for your questions to answer. I'm fine if I can get a glass of water if possible. So we will look at the determinants of shadow banking, which takes us to 2007 and 2009 global financial crisis. How do we really define what shadow banking is? Why do we call this one shadow banking? Shadow banking basically is a very complex setup within traditional banking system. Although shadow banking activities are in shade, which are not very visible, it is not something that is mysterious. Therefore, it involves a serious transparency issue which arises from asymmetric information. Those who study economics are probably familiar with this asymmetric information issue. You know, there are two main dimensions in asymmetric information, as the quantity of information and the quality of information. Sometimes it's the quantity that rules, sometimes it's the quality of information. So by asymmetric information, we basically mean that when there are two parties, one knows more or better than the others. And this makes the other, the secondary, vulnerable because of the acts of the first party who is or who knows, who has better information. Okay, so this thing is pretty valid in the banking sector, in traditional banking sector, because none of us, including myself, although I have a PhD in banking, I cannot clearly follow what the bankers are doing every single day. Their transactions, their investments, millions of transactions, millions of customers, millions of dollars, huge investment opportunities and all that. So it's not possible technically to follow those guys in, thank you, John, in the markets and figure out whether they are keeping my savings safe or not. Now this brings us to the primary function of the banking. Primary function of the banking is safekeeping function. There are other functions, but the primary function is the safekeeping function. And a depositor is not an investor. It is not an investor. Depositor never takes risk for any given return. Okay? It's a depositor. Investor is somebody else, but depositors are not investors. Therefore, think about for a while when you work your entire life for 30 years and then you get your retirement pension and deposit in a bank, and a couple of weeks later someone comes up and says that your bank went bankrupt. What happens? You lose your entire life saving. You are not investor, okay? You are depositor, but still lose your entire life saving. Therefore, someone has to eliminate this asymmetry that we have between the consumers or depositors and the bankers. And who is that person? Or who is that institution? Basically, it is the government. It is the state that we are paying taxes to hire experts to eliminate that asymmetric information, or in other words, to make sure that our banking system is fine and our banking system is sound, okay? They are not taking excessive risks so that those risks may occur in the future and they can fail and we lose our deposits, okay? This is the reason why, and it's one of the main justification of why banking sector is heavily regulated and supervised. Have you ever thought why we are not supervising shoe production or blue jean production industry? Or why they are not heavily regulated, as heavy as it is in the banking sector? Because there is not that big public interest in blue jean production as it is in the banking sector. When a bank fails, or a group of banks fail, millions of people lose their life savings, okay? So a bank failure imposes a tremendous cost on the shoulders of the public. Therefore, government has to make sure that our banks are sound and safe, okay? So this is why we supervise and regulate the banks. By regulation, we mean that there are a lot of measures, a lot of rules, so many rules, which tells bankers how to behave with our savings in their institutions, okay? We are not pretty much interested in the investors. Investors are totally different story because they are taking risks and they may fail. There is nothing wrong with that. If they take the risk and they fail, they can lose their own investment. But savers, that's not the case for savers, I'm afraid. Okay, savers has to be kept safe because of the safekeeping function of the banking system. So, asymmetric information can be eliminated to some extent, if not fully, between the savers and the bankers. Shadow banking can be defined as financial activities of some financial institutions, both deposit accepting and non-deposit accepting, and either not regulated or lightly regulated, and indeed an integral part of the banking system. Now, when we read this definition carefully, we realize that shadow banking is an integral part of the traditional banking system. Okay? It's not something outside the system, it's within the system, it's embedded within the system. So it comes from certain sources or certain acts of the bankers, okay, which keep their transactions in shade, or in other words, invisible from the regulators and the supervisors. Now, this definition holds at the local level, okay? But globalization today made this definition much more complicated with the involvement of international institutions on top of this definition. So, a more comprehensive definition of shadow banking is that the system of unregulated off-balance sheet credit intermediation and maturity and liquidity transformation activities conducted by a bank, owned or sponsored entities in the capital and money market domains for the primary purpose of expanding the rate of production of yield-bearing debt securities required by the global investor community. This is the most comprehensive definition we have today about the shadow banking. So there are a lot of things involved in it, like traditional banks, other non-thrifty institutions that are not accepting deposit, other institutions, plus international investors, capital markets, which are long-term markets, money markets, which are short-term markets, and they are trying to produce yield-bearing debt securities, which are risky investment vehicles, investment tools. So even when you look at this definition, it gets pretty complicated, not only for the public, but also for the supervisors and the regulators. It's not that easy to figure out what is shadow banking activity and what is not. Traditional banking business, contrary to this definition, is composed of three main things, as maturity transformation, like piling up short-term funds, transferring it into long-term investments, is called maturity transformation. Liquidity transformation, piling up small savings, making them in large bulks, and make them available for the negative savers who are in need of borrowing money. And credit transformation, like funding all these things into credits or transforming these things into credits for the needs of the public. However, the last 4 decades, traditional banking developed tremendously with the help of technology and financial innovations, which created new channels through which the traditional banking functions can be performed. Technology now made it available with the help of other fields of engineering like financial engineering, that there are a lot of different channels in which banking activities can be performed, okay? And